Hi everyone, my name is Mason and I work for Comet Backup here in New Zealand. Welcome along to the Thebe release webinar. I'm here to talk for about half an hour about our latest software release, what we've been working on and all of the new and exciting changes from the last quarter. I have been regularly running this webinar series. It showcases the latest and greatest new features in Comet. Back in 2021, we ran these webinars every month. But at the start of last year, 2022, we switched to publishing a monthly blog post about what's new. And this info webinar series now runs once a quarter related to the major quarterly software releases that we do. So if you count the whole webinar series, then this is episode 25. But regardless of what our schedule is, it's all on the webinar platform, and you can subscribe to notifications about when we go live. My talk today will probably be about 30 minutes, and that's including some time for questions at the end. So if you're watching this live on our webinar platform, I am coming to you live. It's 9 a.m. here in New Zealand, and there is a chat widget, so sort of in the bottom right corner of your screen. And you can click the button to pop it open, and if you have any questions as we go, just write them in, and I'll do my best to answer them at the end. So about 30 minutes, maybe a bit less. Everyone's busy. I'll keep it short. Hope you've got a coffee, get settled in, and I'll just press on with things. So as you've seen from the title, today I'm going to talk about Comet 23.5 Thebe, which is our latest quarterly release. So the 23.5 version number is the year and the month. So we release new Comet versions every week under the Voyager release track. And then every quarter, 4 times a year, we take all of our regular Voyager development and roll it up into these quarterly milestone releases. And that's your new fixed point to build on and offer to your customers, and we'll support it with patches and the tickets. And another quarter's just flown by, and today I'm going to recap all the new things you can expect when upgrading to Thebe. So a little bit about the name. What you're seeing here in the picture, this is Thebe. Thebe is named out as a moon of Jupiter. We've been doing a lot of moons of Jupiter recently for the code names. And moons of Jupiter all take their names from ancient Greek mythological figures. So Thebe is a very small moon, only 0.004 times Earth's gravity. And because it's so light, it's less likely to sort of pull itself into a sphere. And you can see this large impact crater covers probably about 40% of its surface area. It was discovered by the Voyager spacecraft back in 1979, but because it's so small and so far away, almost nothing else could be discovered about it until the next spacecraft, Galileo, visited 2 full decades later. It's believed to contain water ice, but enough about the moon. How about some Comet features? We've covered 10 features and 22 enhancements this quarter for Thebe, and the full changelogs are available on our website in the release notes section. And today I'll just walk you through some of the main new features, starting off with Comet Server Web Interface. When upgrading to Thebe, you'll be greeted with a new experience. So this is the first major Comet Server Web Interface upgrade in about 6 years. We're very excited and proud of the new layout. It looks very clean and modern. Picture says 1,000 words, but I would like to point out a few specific features here. First of all is that the navigation menu bar is now on the left instead of on the top, and this means you can get between pages faster without needing to click through menus. The current page is highlighted, which helps ground you where you are and stop that feeling of getting lost. The quick search bar has also been modernized, and there are more customization options. So you've always been able to set up a custom logo image and branding color, but now you can also set an accent color for highlights. And just a quick look at some individual pages. So the home page has seen the most dramatic change, including there's new navigation buttons in the top right and a rework of all of these admin widgets. So there's new widgets showing how many of each protected item type you're using rather than just all boosters together, which shows how much used and free space is available on your storage role data location. It shows the status and last runtime of your server self-backup. That's nice. There's a real-time live chart of replication progress if you're using server replication. And there's a few more new widgets as well. The policies page has also been redesigned. So this page has just gotten longer and longer as we added more policies into new versions of Comet. And so we've split the policies page to use sub-tabs. And so this includes a summary page, and as well as that, a new helpful feature to suggest bulk exclusion paths. One more thing, quick run backup. So when looking at a user account, you go to the Protected Items tab, The new user interface design has also added a quick access run backup button to just quickly command the device to start a backup job. Now, previously this was available on the connected devices page or from the devices tab, but just putting it here on the protected items tab directly, it's just way more convenient place, and it shows off this functionality more clearly to new Comet Server administrators. So overall, nice visual refresh, not too scary. We haven't changed the workflows that you're used to, but overall it does just look a bit more flash and modern. And so we're very pleased to see this become more widely available in our latest quarterly release, 23.5 Thebe. So we just talked about a nice cosmetic visual feature. Now here's some core functionality. The latest versions of Comet have added support for object lock on S3. So I'd like to explain this from the start. Object lock is a feature of some S3 compatible storage locations. And if this feature is available, the storage platform lets you lock an object inside that S3 compatible bucket, which prevents it from being deleted or modified for a fixed period of time. Now, this is a fantastic new capability for Comet because it is a key defense against ransomware. And Comet generally requires the ability to add and delete files within your storage location. So deleting files, it's necessary for applying retention passes, updating index files, coordinating locking across multiple devices. However, if malware is running on your PC and manages to intercept Comet's own storage credentials, maybe it attaches a debugger or watches the network or something. If malware manages to intercept Comet's own storage credentials, it can act as Comet, and it would be able to delete files, causing havoc. So we're looking for a way that allows Comet to still be able to delete files, but some sort of safe way to where that deletion is reversible in case of a malware attack. So Comet's using something called S3 compliance mode to lock individual objects within the storage location, and this ensures there is no way for that object to really be fully deleted for that fixed length of time. Not using Comet storage credentials, not even if your administrator S3 credentials are leaked. So it's great security from that point of view. And in terms of how this actually relates with Comet trying to delete its own files and applying retention passes, it took a little bit of work to get it right, and we've got a visual overview of the process in our usage guide, and also the simplified explanation. But in general, you can just turn it on. This feature works quite well with a large range of S3 compatible providers. There are a lot of S3 compatible storage providers in the market. Not all of them offer this feature, but if they do, we've found it usually works with Comet straight away. In particular, some of the important names in the industry are Amazon S3 and Wasabi. So our feature works brilliantly with these two providers, and for these two, it can also be configured on the storage templates screen in the Comet Server settings page. Now, this is important because Object Lock builds on top of S3 versioning, and S3 versioning can only be enabled or disabled when the bucket is created for the first time. So this is really tied in with when and how that S3 bucket is provisioned, and hence with those storage templates. It probably means that you can't turn this on for an existing S3 bucket unless you clone all the objects into a new versioning enabled bucket first. And actually Wasabi's staff have been trained in how to do that, and they can assist with the process. So for AWS, Amazon S3 and Wasabi, there's this optional feature here, these two fields as part of the storage template screen. But this does also work for other S3 compatible providers too, including iDrive E2, very popular low-cost S3 compatible storage platform, as well as any storage providers out there that are using the MinIO server software behind the scenes. So please check with your S3 compatible providers documentation to see if Object Lock is available. For these providers, you would need to enable it manually on a per storage vault basis. And so the same settings are available here. And this is just partially because we have less control over the bucket provisioning in these cases, and we're not able to automatically ensure that the bucket is already, it's got that versioning capability. Now, Backblaze B2 are the other major player that Comet integrates well with. They're very reliable, low cost, strong recommendation from the team here. I've put some asterisks here because we already have a different immutable anti-ransomware feature for Backblaze B2. So regular Comet users may be aware of the existing hide files instead of deleting them option for Backblaze B2. Now, Backblaze B2 supports both a native API, their original API, and also an S3 compatible layer over the native API. When you use the Backblaze B2 option in Comet, it's using the native API. And so the S3 functionality doesn't exist inside the native API. However, the existing hide files instead of deleting them option can be used to provide the same equivalent strong protection against ransomware for Backblaze B2. As a quick interlude, the object lock feature was a highly upvoted feature on our feature voting page. So if you haven't seen this system before, it's available from the resources menu in the account.cometbackup.com system. You can request new features or upvote features that other people have requested. And if you upvote or comment on a feature, you'll get notified when the feature is completed or if anything significant changes with it. So it's a great way to get notified when new features are available. We look at the system often. We do develop ideas from in here. When I looked at this yesterday, we were up to 151 completed features. So we really do look at this often to help guide and prioritize what we should be developing next. It's not the only thing we base our decision making on, but it does play an important part. So please check it out. And here's another feature we completed this quarter that was also a highly upvoted feature request. The self-hosted Comet server is now available as a Docker container. Starting from the start, Docker is a pretty popular system for running applications in containers, which is a metaphor about freight shipping. Freight shipping containers have got a consistent size and shape. This boat is capable of carrying a couple hundred containers, and it all fits within a larger shipping ecosystem. They all know how to, forklifts can carry the container and boats can move them around. Doesn't really matter what's in it. And the idea of Docker containers is that they also have some standardized size and shape to fit within a larger, ecosystem. Each one of these containers is an app, and the boat is your operating system or cluster or whatever. And each containerized application has been standardized. They have a standard way to start, to stop, to log messages. They've got a standard way to configure their storage and settings, how HTTP ingress and TLS termination works, how sandboxing, permission restrictions, all of that gets standardized. And all of these container apps can be packed together properly on the same host. So here's our container. And it should make it very easy for existing Docker users to get started with that self-hosted Comet Server app and to manage it going forward in that consistent Docker way. And because of that consistency, it also enables some surprising new functionality, such as running multiple self-hosted Comet servers on the same PC or VM. The existing self-hosted installers are staying. They will, of course, continue to be available. So this is just an option for people who, run those kind of ships with those lots of apps. And for you people, technically, this is an OCI compatible container. So not just Docker, but other ship manufacturers, such as, Podman, Kubernetes, Runc, could be used to run this container. And I mentioned earlier that this came from a feature request in our feature voting system for this container. And so thank you to everyone who voted and commented on this feature. And a special thanks to Hobedy for providing an unofficial container to the community so far. It's great to see the community working together to help each other. And we've taken a lot of inspiration from their work to build out our official solution. Audit logging. So to help our partners meet their compliance obligations, we've added advanced audit logging capabilities into Comet Server. This feature is off by default, but if you enable it, it will log almost every action the Comet server is capable of, including each time someone logs in, either administrators or users, anytime anyone restores data, any changes to user or server settings, and so on. There's quite a big list. You can see it there. It all gets logged server-side into a secure file. This work was based on extending Comet Server's live event streaming features to cover a much more comprehensive set of data. You might not be aware of this, but Comet Server has an event streaming infrastructure that forms the basis of the webhook feature, where you can set up webhooks in the settings page. And we also have a WebSocket API for sort of pull-based instead of push-based access to this stream of events. So if you're making use of these existing features, the webhook WebSocket features, after you upgrade to the latest version of Comet 23.5 Thebe, you may start receiving a larger amount of data, lots more event types that have been added. They all have distinct types, so it shouldn't affect your applications, but if you want to reduce the data flow, you can declare a restriction on the streamable event types that you want to receive as part of setting up the webhook or WebSocket. Not much more to say about audit logging, just a lot of more events, all getting logged server side. The last thing I want to say is that this can currently only be enabled from the config file by setting the audit file options property. And we expect it should become a user option in the settings page during the next Voyager cycle. Code signing, everyone's favorite topic to fall asleep to. This section is of interest to people who are custom branding the white label Comet Backup client. So if you are customizing the branding of the Comet Backup desktop app, we would recommend setting up code signing certificates. Having a code signing certificate means that installing Comet Backup proceeds more smoothly through Smart Screen and antivirus pop-up warnings on Windows and through Gatekeeper on Mac OS. It's not that hard to set up. There's a pretty small cost to buy a certificate, and we have documentation on installing that into your Comet server. That was our standard explanation until now. Something has happened. The rules have changed. The Windows code signing program, Authenticode, is currently in a period of disruption as new rules are being put into place, owing to the high number of events where developer code signing certificates were leaked, stolen, lost, and malware shows up as being verified publisher GitHub or verified publisher Symantec or NVIDIA. There are some new requirements being enforced from June the 1st, 2023, just the start of this month. We're already a week into it. That any newly issued code signing certificates can no longer be stored as plain files on disk, but must instead be stored in a hardware security module or equivalent isolated device. Now, Comet has long supported Authenticode certificates using either certificate files on disk or via plugin HSM devices that are compatible with the PKCS 11 standard. And up until now, we mostly worked on this HSM support because there are two tiers of Authenticode available. There's the basic one, and then you can pay extra for extended validation. And extended validation performs a slightly deeper level of, business verification, legal checks of your target organization before issuing the certificate. And all this extra vetting comes with a higher purchase cost, but it does result in a higher initial level of reputation for your signed EXEs. And so an EV certificate was always required to be stored on an HSM, and so that's why Comet has support for HSMs already. But with the new requirements from June the 1st, 2023, start of this month, it's really just taking this HSM requirement and extending that requirement to cover all Authenticode certificates, not just EV. So all well and good. It means if you have to use an HSM, then you may as well pay the extra, $100 and get the better certificate type. Or maybe they'll phase out EV. It's kind of been, they used to have EV for web browser certificates as well, and that's kind of been phased out a little bit. Who knows? Can't predict the future. But the HSM requirement looks like it's here to stay. So an HSM is usually a physical USB dongle, which is a problem because it's common to install Comet Server on a cloud VM or VPS where plugging in a USB dongle or smart card hardware device, not really physically possible. And this difficulty also discouraged many MSPs from using this higher quality extended validation service, With the file-based method being phased out, neither option is really suitable, so another option had to be found, and we've found another answer, and that answer is Cloud HSMs. So Comet 23.5 Thebe adds support for code signing using Azure Key Vault. Azure Key Vault is a cloud service from Microsoft to manage the secure provisioning of security keys and certificates, including for Authenticode code signing. So there are various services and pricing tiers available, but in particular, they have managed cloud HSMs that meet the new June 1st, 2023 Authenticode requirements. So Authenticode always worked on a reseller model. It still does. And at this time, we would recommend probably Global Sign or Trust Zone for issuing new Authenticode certificates. And there's no carryover reputation with Authenticode, so it doesn't matter who you get your next certificate from. But Global Sign and Trust Zone in particular, these two companies were prepared. They were prepared early for the new requirements. They've got a vetting process. They can prove you're using an HSM. The private key, they've got this integration with Azure Key Vault. The private key never leaves the cloud HSM. And then Comet Server only uses an Azure application ID to remotely perform the signing steps. So that would be our recommendation at this time. Toolchain compatibility, just a real brief note here. So Comet Server can perform this Authenticode code signing for Windows, regardless of whether Comet Server is installed on a Windows or Linux host OS. And we achieve this by using a cross-platform signing toolchain. To support the new Azure Key Vault feature, we've had to switch the tool that we use here. For most people, there'll be no difference. For some use cases, first of all, if you're using a USB dongle, please just double check the settings. And if you're running Comet Server on ARM Linux, such as a Graviton server on AWS, you will need to be running a glibc distro like Ubuntu, Red Hat, CentOS, or something like that, and not a muzzle distro like Alpine, just owing to something about the way glibc works. And I think we can make this a temporary requirement, but most people shouldn't be affected, should be just fine. So I've talked about the toolchain, talked about Azure Key Vault. One last thing to mention is a little bit unrelated, but Microsoft, along with third-party security vendors, continue to harden the security posture of the Windows operating system and make it more secure, or maybe just more paranoid. And Comet Backup's client installer gets code signed by all of this process, or if you're using the pre-signed clients. So Comet Backup's client installer gets code signed. However, over the time, the security checks that Microsoft does have increased, and we recently heard reports that the uninstaller for Comet could trigger some alerts in security products, and as a result, we now also code sign the uninstaller for Comet to help avoid this issue. So just a few sort of news updates with code signing there, and the new rules will take effect from for all new Authenticode renewals going forward. Okay, just a quick slide to wake you back up. After that, search restore from web. When restoring data, Comet prompts you for the storage vault to restore from, the backup snapshot to browse inside, and then the file or all files respectively. However, if you're trying to restore a single file without knowing exactly when it was last available or what folder it was inside, Comet's search button can search through all backup job snapshots to find the right match. Now, the search button has been available in the desktop app for a while, in the same place, sort of in the top right corner of the restore dialog. New in Comet 23.5 Thebe is you can now remotely kick off these file search from the Comet Server web interface. And so you'll just click the search button, get the search interface, and do everything from inside the web interface. Just like with the rest of the restore process, this works by remotely controlling a device to do all the work. So this lets you search for files even if a customer's storage vault is on a local hard drive or something like that. Here's a quick API update. So when you visit the Comet Server web interface, Your web browser loads and runs what's called a single page app, or an SPA, and this web app is actually running locally inside your browser. And then from inside your browser, it then speaks to the Comet Server backend entirely using our public API. And this API broadly covers every action you take within the Comet Server web interface, which means if you can do an action in the web interface, then it can be automated by a developer. The Comet Server API is comprehensively documented, and notably during May, we added many more comments and explainer notes to the constants, endpoints, type defs. So for the integration developers out there, if you're using the existing SDKs for our supported language, you will see these new comments and greatly expanded documentation for the API appear automatically in your IDEs during autocomplete. So that's always nice. The API can be used from pretty much any programming language. We've got sample code for about a dozen, and we have full SDKs available for PHP, Ruby, JavaScript, TypeScript, and Go. And on that topic, the part that's new this quarter is we have welcomed the latest addition to this group, which is a new C# SDK for the .NET framework. It's exactly as it sounds. It's one package to import, and then you get complete coverage for all the data structures and API methods for our public Comet Server API, and it should just make it easier to get up and running with your C# development projects. To quickly run through some bullet points about it, it's MIT license on GitHub, same as all of our other SDKs. We have a NuGet package, as you're seeing in the screenshot here, so it can be quickly added as a project reference in Visual Studio or with the .NET command line tooling. It's targeting a pretty low common denominator, the .NET Standard 2.0, which means it should work on pretty much any version of .NET framework, going back to like 4.6, as well as all the new cross-platform ones, .NET 5, .NET 7, and so on. It has both async and sync functions, which makes it really easy to use concurrency, multi-threading to get that excellent performance for your apps. And the last thing to note is that we've left it at version 0 for the moment, just as sort of a, not a warning, but like a signal that this is still pretty new. At Comet, our development team are mostly Go developers. We have some C# experience, but the best feedback comes from the kind of person that uses C# every day. So if you're a C# user, please reach out, give us any feedback, tell us if we built it right. I'm pretty sure we did, but now is the time. If you think we need to make any breaking changes before we commit to that version 1.0 compatibility milestone soon. Okay, that was a tough slide. Here's an easy one. How do you set up storage? Comet is highly flexible in the number of ways you can configure your storage. The customer's device running Comet Backup, if you look at their storage vaults, each storage vault could point to a local path, like a external hard drive or a network share, or it could point directly at a cloud storage provider, or it can point to your Comet server with storage role enabled, which could then receive the data and then store it on a server-side RAID array, or it can proxy it forward to another cloud storage provider, which helps keep that storage platform completely private. There's a lot of options. You can set them all up manually, but storage templates are our built-in provisioning system for new storage vaults. And so if you set up a storage template for, say, Backblaze or Wasabi, you gain the ability to provision private per customer cloud buckets and private access keys with a single click. And if you enable storage role for receiving data into your Comet server or another clustered Comet server, using a storage template can help to very easily provision new storage role buckets for each customer. But what's new in 23.5 Thebe is we have this new test connection button. It was added to the storage template configuration pop-up in the Comet Server web interface, and this button just allows you to quickly verify that the template is working as expected. Now, Comet has long supported a test connection button on the storage vaults to check that your custom credentials are valid, but when setting up a storage template for the first time, the only way to verify that everything was working was to actually try and provision something with it for a test customer. And now with the new test connection button here, we can just quickly verify that your settings are correct without having to leave the dialog. This is my last slide, just skimming through some more interesting changes for Comet that have appeared in 23.5 this quarter. The full changelog is available on the website, and it is pretty long. So just here are some of the highlights. Improved performance and reduced memory usage. Wonderful. Love to see this kind of thing. Most of the improvements apply only in specific situations, but those situations are still pretty common. So we expect most users will see some improvements. In particular, I'd like to call out granular single file restore from disk image or Hyper-V. When you go to restore a single file from inside a disk image backup, it's a significant improvement, something like 5 times faster. The other major one is reducing the memory overhead for S3 destinations, including Wasabi. And when loading large files from inside a storage vault, this should cut down on the peak memory usage for this very popular use case. And I'd like to thank some of the customers recently in the support tickets for being patient with us and running profile builds of Comet to help track down these cases, and I'm sure you'll be pleased with the result. That being said, we've identified more areas for improvement, and you can expect more performance and less memory still to come throughout when the Voyager series reopens. A few more things to celebrate about 23.5 Thebe. We've got improvements for self-backup, including better file names. So the server self-backup archives were always just named backup-some number.zip. That number was a Unix timestamp, the number of seconds since the 1st of January 1970. But now the files have got the calendar date in the file name, which just makes it much more obvious to see what's going on. The self-backup archives have also been extended to be more comprehensive. They now include the Let's Encrypt certificates if you're using Let's Encrypt, and they can also include the server logs, which often contain pretty interesting and important data. Although server logs are optional inside these self-backup archives because they can sometimes have a quite large file size. And our Office 365 protected item type has seen some improvements this quarter, including a partial rewrite. The updated code should be more reliable and more consistent about backing up mailboxes and OneDrive data. It's also more explicit about error handling and rate limiting, which are some of the areas we've identified for improvement. So if you're using the Office 365 backup feature, please check out the latest 23.5 Thebe, and you should see it become more reliable. Multi-delete snapshots from the web interface. So this is kind of an advanced feature. If you know what you're doing and you want to delete individual snapshots, then there's now a user interface to browse and select them. Oh, and this is just a nice one. When you're looking at a user in the Comet Server web interface, on the Devices tab, you can see what IP that device had connected from. Just a nice quality of life improvement. So that's all I have for today. Are there any questions? I can see there's actually some questions in there already. But just to recap, if anyone has more questions, just to recap, I talked about a whirlwind tour of some of the 10 features and 22 enhancements this quarter in our latest Comet 23.5 Thebe release version, including the flash new design for the Comet Server web interface with that left-hand navigation. I talked about S3 object lock, a guaranteed impenetrable defense against ransomware. There was a quick shout out to our feature voting page, so you can share your voice and help us pick the priority for developing new features. I talked about Docker and the new official Docker container for Comet Server. I talked about audit logging and the new expanded event stream. I talked about Codesigning and the new Authenticode rules to require HSMs and how you can comply with that by using Azure Key Vault. The ability to search for files for restore in the Comet Server web interface. The new C# SDK for our public API. A new test connection button when setting up storage templates. Improved performance for granular file restore, reduced memory usage for Wasabi, improvements to self-backup, and our Office 365 support. So there is a question here. Our Comet server is version 23.2 and hosted by Comet AWS. So how do we upgrade it to 23.5, please? Of course, the Comet hosted service is still on the previous quarterly release. It will be upgraded automatically to Thebe later today or tomorrow. So the sysadmin team for Comet hosted, just give it a couple of days before they commit to the upgrade. So you should expect that upgrade to roll out later today. Another question, apart from using a retention lock on the S3 bucket, do we also need to tick something in our Comet storage vault to let it know that we're using a retention lock on the S3 bucket? Yes, you do. So the storage template, when it's provisioned, sets a few options. First of all, it enables versioning on the bucket. And there's more details in the documentation about this, but in short, the way the object lock versioning works is with tombstoning of files in a version stack. So when Comet goes to delete a file, instead of actually deleting the file directly, it places a tombstone on top of it in a stack of versions. And so for ordinary operations, it seems like the file has been deleted. However, it's still there underneath, and it's in a grave. I guess it's not a very good metaphor, sorry. But at some point, the stack of versions just builds up and consumes more and more data storage. And what you really want is to clean up all the tombstoned files after a period of time, after the object lock timer has expired on those files. So if you use the storage templates feature to provision new storage vaults, all of this will be taken care of automatically for you. If you are, and what it does is it takes these settings and pre-applies them on the individual storage vault settings. If you're setting up the storage vault manually, you'll need to set those settings directly, but it's just one checkbox saying how long should the object locks be locked for, and 7 days or something is, you want a reasonably short time period that is not going to cost you too much in storing extra data for a longer period of time, but at the same time is going to give you enough time to at least notice and respond to a malware incident. So 7 days is our default suggestion. So there's one setting for how long do you want that object lock to lock objects for, and there's another setting for, do I actually want to, after that period expires, do I want to clean up all the tombstone files to reclaim that free space again? Someone's posted and saying, no question, just want to say thanks for the nice new UI. Oh, thank you too. I'm very glad you appreciate it. We worked quite hard on it, and it's great to see it finally roll out to the broader user base. Well, I think that's all the questions we have time for today, but we still want to hear from you. If you have any questions at all, we're always happy to help out. We're more than happy to hear your questions by ticket through the usual ticket system at account.cometbackup.com. Or you can email us, hello@cometbackup.com, or did you know we do support phone calls? Our company is based in New Zealand. We do have international support team for round-the-clock sort of level 1 technical support, but if you want a sales call or if you want any more advanced technical support or troubleshooting, we'll need to figure out a good time that suits both us in New Zealand, UTC plus 12, and in your country. So just makes scheduling a bit more complicated, but all you have to do is go to the Comet website. At the bottom of the page, you click Contact Us, and then there's an option to schedule a phone call with this time zone widget showing our available times, and it will work everything out for you. We're more than happy to jump on a call. Often that's a very quick way of clearing the air, getting any answers to questions you might have. So that's all from me. Hope you've managed to take away some useful information. Please check out the latest version of Comet 23.5 Thebe. All users of the previous quarterly series, 23.2 later and earlier, are encouraged to upgrade, but we're also happy for you to keep using older versions if you feel like it. Hope you're all keeping well and safe, and you can expect another webinar for the next quarterly release in 3 months' time. Cheers.